and I want to spend whatever years I have left helping others who haven't been as fortunate as I have. After the United Airlines incident, the media reported various bits and pieces of my life, painting a distorted picture. At one point, several sources even confused me with a different Dr. David Dow. I'm writing this story to set the record straight, but also to give some insight into why I didn't simply give up my seat when I was asked, which I'm sure many people wondered. My story begins over 50 years ago in Vietnam. Chapter 2. I was born in Vietnam and raised in a large family with 6 brothers and sisters. My mother didn't have time for a job since she was raising 7 children. That meant my father had to support our family with his job as a nurse. As anyone who's raised a family knows, you take the opportunities you're offered when it comes to making more money. So when my father was offered the chance to train for a better career in the Army, the fact that his studies would relocate him to the United States for several months didn't deter him. While he was away, our family stayed with a friend of my mother's. When my father returned, he became convinced that my mother had been having an affair while he was away. I never saw any evidence that my mother had cheated on my father, and to my knowledge, none of my siblings ever saw anything either. To this day, I don't know what put that idea in my father's head, but he couldn't be convinced otherwise. Eventually, his questioning of my mother went from simple accusations to outright abuse. One day, I came home from school to find my mother tied to a bed. Her hair had been cut. As I untied her, she told me that my father had done this to her. He'd left her tied to the bed when he went to work. I knew if she was still here when he got home, chances were good that he would kill her. So I told her to leave, to run away to some place where she'd be safe. When my father returned home, he was furious that I'd let my mother go and began slapping me, demanding to know where she'd gone. Since she hadn't told me, there was no way I could have told him, even if I'd wanted to. Eventually, my father decided that the only way he would be able to find my mother would be to file a lawsuit against her, at which point the court would have to track her down so she could appear at the trial. I should point out that attitudes toward marital infidelity were quite different in Vietnam than they were in the United States. While cheating on your spouse in 1960s America certainly carried a stigma, the same behavior was a crime in Vietnam. So my father was able to file a lawsuit against my mother on the charge of infidelity. He was even considered well within his rights to question her the way he did. Despite having no evidence, no eyewitness testimony, and no confession, my mother was found guilty of marital infidelity and sentenced to 6 months in jail. I chose not to attend the trial and was told about the verdict when my father got home. While my mother was in jail, my father filed for a divorce. Given how infidelity was handled, it won't surprise you to know that divorce was also looked down upon in 1960s Vietnam. Not only did it reflect badly on my mother and father, but my siblings and I were also treated differently because of the divorce. In many ways, being the child of a divorced couple was similar to being the child of a criminal, which I suppose I was as well. People not only assumed my parents were somehow immoral or untrustworthy, but they also assumed that whatever was wrong with them had somehow transferred to their children. I didn't experience overt name-calling or accusations, but something more subtle. Once they knew about my parents, people looked at me differently and seemed more on guard around me. After my mother was released from jail, she didn't stop by our house because my father had threatened to kill her if he ever saw her again. One of my cousins told me where she was staying, but I wasn't allowed to visit her there. I know that she started a sewing business in Cho Lun, a city near Saigon, and never remarried, but otherwise we lost touch with one another. My father raised us on his own after the divorce, but I was already near the age when I had to plan for my own career. Probably the most significant reason that I first pursued a career in medicine was to bring some honor back to my family. Being a doctor in Vietnam brought with it a level of prestige, as it does in most parts of the world. As a doctor,